Now, let's move to the Solve My Problem portion of today's event, where Scott will address specific scenarios that were submitted by you earlier, our listeners. And the first one is, I struggle with emotional regulation during conflict. This happens no matter who's involved. However, it really causes issues with my spouse. I've learned to tone it down, but the anger and frustration does come out in my tone and volume of my voice. If I try to stop it, I feel like I might explode. My spouse doesn't like to be yelled at. How can I work on regulating these intense emotions to help me stop myself from yelling?
Okay. What a great and important question to ask. And this is, of course, going to be very common to a lot of our listeners and to those watching the event today. And, shooting from the hip, I'm going to say this is a very prototypical situation which you can start with the stop skill. Stop, with the S being stop. Don't move a muscle, really, the body. Just like let's just stop. We're not moving, and so we're going to take a step back from the situation, right? So we can do that. We can do that if we're, again, especially in this case, if it's with a conflict with the spouse, just step away, and observe what's happening, observing facts of what just happened, observe maybe judgments that you're having internally, proceed carefully. I would add after that, that would be maybe a great opportunity to switch to or to pivot toward opposite action. So if we recommend maybe leaving the room, and this would be a nice DBT strategy, also parallels well with anybody that's familiar with the Gottmans when they talk about taking a break, move away from the situation, but leave the room gently. So again, walk as though your feet are kissing the earth, open the door slowly, leave the room gently, shut the door quietly behind you, keep moving that way. We have a technique we call the love zombie, which is really geared for radical acceptance practices. So it's a combination of classic DBT, distress tolerance skills, which first of all, one would be half smiling. And this is just basically softening the face, allowing the jaw to relax, letting go of tension there. We all hold a lot of tension in our face anyway. And then just kind of letting your lips curl a little bit. And this is not going to solve the problem. This is just helping you downregulate, kind of come into like the reality that, oh, I am really intense. I may be being very judgmental, and maybe I'm already making things worse. So I'm just noticing, acknowledging. I can start with that half smiling. Another technique you can use is called willing hands, where you have your hands open, palm up toward the ceiling. And typical practice, we have those down by your hips. And then you may go ahead and keep that serene facial expression of the half smile and switch your breathing into, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And when your hands are open, this is a receptive posture. So this is more difficult to be angry, because we're not clutching and grasping and so on. This is receptive to reality. This is receptive to what's happening. The third thing you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is it's walk as though your feet are kissing the earth, which is borrowed from a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. And our clients gave us Love Zombie because they said, well, I try all three at once in some cases. And if somebody saw me doing this, they might think I'm a love zombie. So that's why we call it that. But then also validate your spouse, offer relationship repair. And then on the daily, in between those conflicts, work on building resilience with things like exercise, sleep, healthy eating, and so on, which sounds like a yeah, but really committing to that and making that part of your daily routine, I think will help reduce the vulnerabilities to that level of reactivity. It sounds like you're on a really good track, though, already, because you're not name calling. That's good stuff. You're on your way.
Okay. Another question is, there are providers in my area who are listed as providing DBT, but when I contact them, they say they can incorporate some DBT skills into therapy, but DBT is not their focus. How vital is comprehensive DBT?
Okay, comprehensive DBT. I say it is vital. I say comprehensive / adherent DBT is vital if you have severe impairment. It's particularly true with anybody that's suffering with a serious substance use disorder or maybe has struggles with suicidality or self-harm. For somebody who does not struggle with those three potentially life-destroying behaviors, then I don't know that comprehensive DBT is absolutely necessary, but I think it is important that when we approach a clinician who's advertising that they provide DBT, if we can connect with them, I want to ask them, what is their background in training? Are they trained in DBT? What is the training? Am I able to find out if they have, say, intensive training through, say, behavioral tech or folks associated with the Linehan Board of certification, DBT certification, so forth, or foundational training. And while some of those things are not required, we want to find out if the clinicians themselves are doing their best to deliver the best adherent DBT that they can, whether they're individually with you as an individual or they provide a skills training group. I would also want to find out not only what their background is in DBT, but also how do they construe ADHD? Because that's also an important combination. What do they know about, say, executive function deficits, and how would they, treat your problems with DBT? A key question to ask them if they are promoting themselves as DBT practitioners. You might ask them if they're part of a DBT consultation team, because if they're doing that plus individual plus group, they're adherent practitioners. But if they're maybe on their own, they may provide good treatment. We just want to find out by having an informed discussion about in their background, maybe their ongoing continuing education and so forth. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for everyone who wrote in. And now let's turn to questions from our live audience. Someone writes, I have ADHD, rejection-sensitive dysphoria, and depression. I have the depression under control with meds, but I'm going through menopause, and the ADHD and RSD are very difficult to manage. Would DBT be a good fit for someone with my diagnoses?
I think if you have somebody you can access who is sufficiently trained in DBT, I do think DBT would be helpful because of its emphasis on both core mindfulness and on emotion regulation, because this is a time of life where you probably are having more intense mood swings or emotional ability. And I believe DBT strategies help strategies for reducing vulnerability, but also for more emotion acceptance would be helpful. Along with the RSD, with the mindfulness training in terms of how you can learn to pay attention to the thoughts you have, the self-talk, which are often associated with that, the sense of rejection, and then being willing to, engage in some more exposure-based strategies with an eye on effectiveness, and then, do the things that make sense that are in service to your wise mind, life worth living goals.
Okay. Another person asks, my biggest challenge with emotional distress isn't due to any triggering event. Instead, it's from loneliness. When I do open up about my struggles, it usually ends up with others eventually pulling away. How can I connect with others and express my needs and at the same time avoid the feelings of rejection?
That's a tough situation. You're a human being. So like me and Carol and others, you're wired for connection and relationship. To get to know others, of course, some of the basic things, which you probably already do, and this is part of what we promote in DBT, is if you tend to be a little more isolated, then you need to put yourself into proximity to folks, whether that's a makers group or chess club or religious body. So maybe finding groups of people who share values that you're interested in cultivating, that are yours already. There is always going to be a risk. Risk is unavoidable. And so there has to be a willingness to, still attempt to connect. I would say perhaps something to consider from a wise mind point of view would be take time, as all relationships do take time to measure what you share with people. Make sure that they are worthy of receiving particular details of your life. You don't owe everybody every detail about your life, and certainly not immediately. So taking time with that to develop a sense of if they're trustworthy, that you can share those bits about yourself without, hopefully without being judged and so forth. And then on the other hand, I have to be prepared. We all have to be prepared for the fact that somebody may, pull back from us. And so we want to try to develop a slightly wider network. And that's still going to require risk. So some opposite action, going out to connect with others, develop some, skill and conversation perhaps, and then take some distress tolerance skills with you also, because I'm sure it would be, again, that sense of risk is very real. It maybe keeps you from reaching out because of this cycle you've discussed, but I think long-term, big picture, it's worth it. And I think eventually you will connect with folks that are mostly safe, but also, give everybody a little bit of grace. Everybody's fallible.
Okay.
I'm still here.
I'm sorry about that.
No,
I apologize. Another question we have is there an alternate way to help ourselves and children have radical acceptance for ourselves and others when the vast majority of ADHD literature and research sees ADHD as a deficit?
Carol, where are the easy questions?
I'm sorry, Scott.
That's okay. That's okay. Let me try this one. Yeah. Okay. So I'm an ADHD adult, so I guess I'm preferencing that for this reason. And then Mariah, my wife, and we have a little bit of disagreement on this front. So I don't know if this is what you're getting at. I do look at my ADHD as a constellation of executive function impairments. They are real deficits in a way that I have to take very seriously, just as if I had asthma or diabetes or some other chronic condition that required special attention to that. So my answer is, and I don't know if it'll be satisfactory or not. It's not a matter of just get over it. It's a matter of saying, you know what, these executive function impairments, they're biological. I couldn't do anything about it. This is what happened. And when I acknowledge that and I can integrate that into part of who I am, and then I can be as skillful as I possibly can be. And some language we use in our work with our ADHD adults is you can become increasingly effective in life. And but that's always probably going to be in some measure tethered to fallibility. Everybody's fallible. You're fallible. There's some ways in which you are tremendously, fallible compared to others. But getting to a place where, particularly as we move into adulthood, and I think maybe with kids, we just start with like, hey, these are things that happen and you're working on it and you're getting support from us. And when you get older, you're probably going to have to work on it. You're going to continue to work on it because it won't necessarily go away. And that's okay. And you can have a life worth living. You can have love, meaning connection, in spite of, those deficits. They don't have to define you. They are a part of you. And so that's, I guess what I would say is the radical acceptance of, these are here and I don't have to define myself by those. In fact, and then we love our kids. So to steal a little bit from Russell Barkley, who says, we're not engineers. We're not building children, but we are shepherding them. And I think we do that by cultivating safety and connection and love and attachment, and which will help them reach out for help and resources when they are when they fall down, they know they can get back up and get back at it with skills, or they know that they're surrounded by the people who can help them keep going, and that they're not worthy of rejection because this might be struggles for them. I think that'd be my answer for right now.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I love that answer. It was full of support and care and compassion.